March 1944. Somewhere in Europe, the war had a way of reducing life to essentials: sleep, warmth, dry socks, and food, especially food. For the men of one American battalion, supper was often the brightest point of a difficult day. It was the one moment when exhausted soldiers could put down their rifles, sit together, and feel human again. That evening looked no different. At first, the mess tent glowed under hanging lamps. Steam rose from metal containers. Boots shuffled through mud outside. Voices drifted through the cold air. Everything appeared normal, until the line reached the last group of soldiers. Then something strange happened. The food was gone. Not completely gone, just enough gone. The men at the front had received full portions. The men near the end received less. The final group received almost nothing. No shouting followed. No arguments. Most soldiers simply accepted disappointment as another part of military life. A few stared at their trays. One man laughed quietly and said he would be less hungry in the morning. Another folded a piece of bread into his pocket for later. Then they walked away. The incident might have disappeared forever. Except one young cook was watching. His name was Daniel Harper. 22 years old, raised in a farming town where neighbors still helped neighbors bring in harvests. Daniel was not a hero. Not yet. He had never fired a shot in combat. He had never led troops. His war happened behind serving counters and giant cooking kettles, but he understood numbers. And something about those numbers bothered him. Long after the meal ended, he remained inside the tent. He counted remaining supplies, checked serving records, calculated portions. Then he counted again. The figures refused to cooperate. Enough food had arrived. Enough food had been prepared. Enough food should have existed, yet dozens of men had gone hungry. Daniel sat quietly at a wooden table. The tent had emptied. The lamps flickered. Outside, rain tapped softly against canvas. Something wasn't right. The question was simple. Where had the food gone? For several days he watched, not openly, carefully, patiently. He noticed trays being prepared before enlisted men arrived. He noticed certain officers receiving larger portions, not dramatically larger, just enough. An extra scoop here, an additional helping there. Small privileges, small advantages, small exceptions. Individually, they looked insignificant. Together, they created shortages. The pattern repeated, again, and again, and again. The problem wasn't one meal. It was becoming a culture. Daniel understood the danger of speaking up. Armies relied on chains of command. Young cooks were not expected to criticize officers. They were expected to cook, nothing more. So he kept watching, until one evening he could no longer ignore it. Near midnight, he walked across camp carrying a notebook. His destination was a sergeant named Robert Mitchell. Mitchell was 40 years old, a veteran. Calm, respected, the kind of man soldiers trusted because he never raised his voice unnecessarily. Daniel knocked on the doorframe. Mitchell looked up. The young cook hesitated. Then he said something that would change everything. "The men didn't eat tonight." The sergeant stared at him. For several moments, neither spoke. Finally, Mitchell asked a question. "Are you sure?" Daniel nodded. Very slowly, Mitchell closed the paperwork on his desk. "Show me." Over the next week, the sergeant conducted his own quiet review. No accusations, no announcements, just observation. He checked records, counted portions, spoke with soldiers, compared supply reports. What he discovered troubled him. Daniel had been right. Not once. Repeatedly. 47 enlisted men had been affected by shortages linked to preferential treatment. 47 names. Mitchell wrote each one carefully. The notebook became heavier with every entry, not because of its weight, because of what it represented. Of failure. Not of logistics. Of leadership. When his investigation ended, Mitchell prepared a report. The document itself was unremarkable. A few pages. Several observations. Supporting numbers. Witness accounts. Nothing dramatic. Nothing emotional. Just facts. He sent it upward. Then he waited. Most people expected nothing. Military paperwork disappeared every day. Reports moved into filing cabinets and vanished. Weeks passed. Life continued. The war continued. Men marched. Vehicles moved. Artillery thundered in distant fields. The report seemed forgotten. Then something unexpected happened. A headquarters officer reviewing administrative concerns noticed a pattern. The shortages appeared connected to command behavior. That changed everything. Food shortages could be explained. Leadership failures attracted attention. The report moved higher. Then higher again. Each desk brought new questions. Each review uncovered more details. Additional records appeared. More witnesses spoke. The issue expanded beyond missing portions. The deeper investigators looked, the clearer the picture became. Certain officers had gradually begun treating rank as entitlement, not service. Entitlement. Nobody had planned it. Nobody had announced it. The culture had simply grown, one exception at a time, one privilege at a time, one rationalization at a time, until hungry soldiers became acceptable collateral damage. And then the report reached an office where thousands of documents arrived every week. Most would never become memorable. This one did. General George Patton's headquarters. The war generated endless paperwork. Operational reports, casualty reports, supply reports, intelligence reports. The stack never ended. Yet one afternoon, a single document found its way into the pile. A minor matter, at least on paper. Food portions, officer conduct, battalion complaints. Nothing compared to battlefield operations. Nothing compared to major offensives. Nothing compared to strategic decisions affecting entire armies. Still, something caught Patton's attention. The general sat reading, then stopped. He read a section again. Silence filled the room. Staff officers waited. Patton turned another page. Finished. Then set the report down. No speech followed. No visible anger. No dramatic reaction. He simply stared across the room for nearly a minute. Finally, he asked one question. Who were the officers? The room became very still, because everyone present understood something. The issue was no longer food. It was leadership. And Patton cared deeply about leadership. To him, rank carried obligations. Privileges came second. An officer existed to serve the men under his command. Not the reverse. The names were gathered. Records requested. Personnel files reviewed. Orders moved rapidly. Across headquarters, phones rang. Messengers traveled. Commanders received instructions. Within hours, an inquiry expanded. Nobody knew exactly what would happen. Rumors spread through the battalion. Conversations became cautious. Doors closed. Meetings appeared on schedules without explanation. Officers who once felt secure suddenly felt exposed. The uncertainty was worse than punishment, because nobody knew how much investigators knew, or who had spoken, or what records existed. Every day increased tension. Then came the interviews, one after another. Officers entered rooms, answered questions, explained decisions, provided justifications. Many insisted the extra portions were insignificant, small, harmless, routine. The responses revealed the problem. They genuinely believed it. That was what concerned investigators most. The issue was never the amount of food. It was what the food represented. Trust, fairness, responsibility. A commander who believed his comfort mattered more than his men's welfare had already damaged the unit. Not physically, morally. Eventually, senior officers faced direct review. Accounts were compared. Contradictions emerged. Patterns became undeniable. No shouting occurred. No dramatic accusations. The most powerful moments happened during silence. One officer reportedly finished explaining his actions and waited. The reviewing commander simply looked at him for several seconds, then asked, "Did your men eat first?" Nothing more. Just that. The officer had no answer that improved his situation. As findings accumulated, consequences followed. Swiftly, assignments changed. Promotions disappeared. Command positions vanished. Reputations suffered. By sunset on the final day of review, 14 careers had changed direction. Some officers were reassigned. Some removed from leadership, others found advancement suddenly impossible. The punishment varied, the message did not. Leadership was not a reward. Leadership was a responsibility. The battalion felt the impact immediately, not because announcements were made, because behavior changed. People noticed. Officers became more careful, more attentive, more aware of the example they set. Then one evening, another meal was served. A simple meal. Nothing historic. Nothing extraordinary. Soldiers entered the mess tent. They moved through the line, received fair portions, sat down. A few looked around. Quietly. The difference was visible. Not in the food, in the atmosphere. Something had returned. Trust. No speeches celebrated the moment. No ceremony marked the occasion. The men simply ate. And for the first time in a long while, everyone ate. Daniel Harper stood near the serving station, watching. As he always had, few people knew his role. Fewer still understood how far his concern had traveled. He had not sought recognition. He had not wanted revenge. He had only noticed something wrong, then refused to look away. History often remembers generals. It remembers battles. It remembers victories. What it forgets are moments like this. Moments when ordinary people protect principles before anyone else notices they are disappearing. A young cook. A notebook. 47 names. A single report. And a question powerful enough to reach the highest levels of command. Years later, many soldiers would forget the exact menu served that night. They would forget weather conditions, dates, locations, details, but they would remember the lesson, because it extended far beyond military service. Leadership begins with sacrifice, not privilege. The battlefield merely reveals what already exists. A commander who eats before his men may gain a meal, but he loses something far more important: their trust. And once trust disappears, rank alone cannot replace it. The war would continue. New battles would come. New hardships would arrive. Yet somewhere in the memory of that battalion remained a quiet reminder that accountability was possible, even when nobody expected it, even when the problem seemed small, even when the people involved appeared powerful. Sometimes justice begins with a person willing to say one simple sentence: "The men didn't eat tonight." And sometimes that sentence changes everything. So what do you think? If you had witnessed those shortages and knew speaking up could create enemies above you, would you have reported it or convinced yourself it was too small to matter?